I'll turn to the Office of the Auditor General first. Mr. Hayes, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Monsieur le Président, merci de nous inviter.
Mr. Chairperson, thank you for inviting us back to discuss our audit report on the ArriveCAN application that was tabled on February 12th. I'd like to acknowledge that this hearing is taking place on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I'm accompanied today by Sami Hanoush, who was responsible for the audit. The audit examined whether the Canada Border Services Agency, the Public Health Agency of Canada, and Public Services and Procurement Canada had managed all aspects of the ArriveCAN application with due regard to the value that would be derived, i.e. value for money. I'll limit my remarks today to the role played by Public Services and Procurement Canada. The department was to issue and administer contracts on behalf of the CBSA and the Public Health Agency of Canada where the value of a contract exceeded their delegated procurement authority. We found that Public Services and Procurement Canada had questioned the CBSA's decision to use non-competitive processes to award ArriveCAN work. It did suggest alternatives such as shorter non-competitive processes or competitive processes with shorter bidding periods. Despite this advice, the agency decided to proceed on a non-competitive basis.
We also reported that the Canada Border Services Agency's overall management of the contracts was very poor. Essential information was missing from awarded contracts and other documents, such as clear deliverables and the qualifications required of workers. We found that contrary to Public Services and Procurement Canada's supply manual, the department co-signed several task authorizations drafted by the Canada Border Services Agency that did not detail task descriptions and deliverables. Without this information, it is difficult to assess whether work was delivered as required and completed on time while providing value for money. Public Services and Procurement Canada also co-signed many of the agency's amendments to task authorizations. Some amendments increased the estimated level of effort or extended the time period without adding new tasks or deliverables. This drove up the contract's value without producing additional benefits. To deliver value for dollars spent and support accountability for the use of public funds, the Canada Border Services Agency and Public Services and Procurement Canada should ensure that tasks and deliverables are clearly defined in contracts and related task authorizations. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening statement. We would be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Reza, you have the floor for up to 5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. As the Deputy Minister of Public Services and Procurement Canada, my team and I are here to continue the important discussion about the Auditor General's report into the development of the ArriveCAN application. I'm joined today by Dominique Laporte, Assistant Deputy Minister for Procurement, and Catherine Poulin, Assistant Deputy Minister for Departmental Oversight. During the pandemic, my department played a key role in keeping the work of the Government of Canada going, as well as providing key support to provinces and territories. We are particularly proud of our role with regards to the urgent procurement of critical supplies and life-saving vaccines. PSPC has been part of 2 large audits since the pandemic, one related to the procurement of personal protective equipment and the other to the procurement of vaccines. These audits found in general that the controls and the procurement process worked as they should. However, in the case of ArriveCAN, both the Auditor General and the Procurement Ombudsperson have identified areas where we need to strengthen our oversight, notably related to documentation and to our procurement processes of IT consultants. We accept these recommendations in full and have already put management actions in place to strengthen our processes.
on improving and further strengthening our processes, especially when it comes to IT procurement, and we've been working since the fall to do just that. Actions we've taken to date include improving evaluation requirements to ensure resources are properly qualified, requiring increased transparency from suppliers around their price and their use of subcontractors. Third, improving documentation when awarding contracts and issuing task authorizations. Fourth, clarifying work requirements and activities and specifying which activities and which projects are worked on by contractors. In addition, my department is updating its guidance to aid other departments and agencies in procuring responsibly when using our procurement instruments under their own authorities. And finally, PSPC has also taken measures to appoint a senior executive who will be responsible for quality assurance and strengthening documentation within PSPC. Fundamentally, improving IT procurement requires us to ensure those processes are clear and transparent, and that the roles, responsibilities, and rules are understood and respected and adhered to. This includes working closely with the Treasury Board Secretariat and client departments and agencies to ensure that procurements are undertaken in a manner that respects the principles of fairness, openness, and transparency. In this regard, both the Treasury Board Directive on the Management of Procurement and PSPC's Supply Manual stipulate the division of roles and responsibilities. For example, departments, our clients, are responsible for providing a justification for using non-competitive procurements. In the case of procurements related to ArriveCan, the Auditor General's evaluation found that PSPC effectively provided a challenge function to the CBSA and proposed various alternatives to using non-competitive processes, such as running shorter competitive processes or shorter contract periods in the case of the non-competitive approaches. Within the context of the emergency situation brought on by the pandemic, PSPC and our legal counsel found that the justification provided by the CBSA for their approach was sufficient and met the criteria for emergency use. When it comes to the lack of transparency around decision-making, we are committed to addressing the root causes, strengthening document management practices, and continuing the deployment of our electronic procurement solution, so that transparency in decision-making is ensured and Canadians, parliamentarians, can have renewed confidence in the administration of federal procurement activities. New measures that we've put in place have already addressed a number of these areas, and we continue to take action to further strengthen the procurement of IT services. En terminant, je sais que les médias...
In closing, I know that there have been many concerns raised in the media and in parliamentary committees regarding federal procurement and the integrity of the system. We do share those concerns and are actively working to improve the procurement system, as well as undertaking required investigations where warranted. The area of procurement is one that inherently has higher levels of risks associated with in terms of conflicts of interest. And that is why the government requires of all its suppliers, their subcontractors, and all employees to operate lawfully and in a responsible manner by, at a minimum, meeting the expectations and obligations set out in the Code of Conduct for Procurement. For federal public servants, those expectations and obligations are outlined in the Code of Values and Ethics. These codes provide important underpinnings and guiding principles for the work that is done in procurement, and ensuring respect and adherence to these codes is of the utmost importance. Our actions will help reinforce the adherence to the codes, improve the way that we do business with companies, and further safeguard the integrity of the procurement system. Thank you.
Et voilà, merci beaucoup.